A cruise ship leaves the port of Ushuaia in Argentina. On board, 150 passengers from 23 different countries. Families, retirees, adventurers who came to explore the icy islands of Antarctica. No one yet knows that this voyage is about to turn into a nightmare. 5 days after departure, a 70-year-old man develops a fever. Just a fever. He goes to see the ship's doctor. 2 days later, he is struggling to breathe. And on April 11, 2026, he dies on that ship, in the middle of the ocean, far from any hospital. That is only the beginning. Other passengers fall ill. A woman dies 4 days after the first symptoms. The first patient's wife, who had left the ship with her husband's body, collapses in an airport in South Africa. She dies the following day. For several days, the ship drifts off the African coast. No country is willing to take it in.
It has become the ship of death. And the virus responsible for all of this, a virus with no vaccine, no curative treatment, capable of killing 1 in every 2 people, is called Hantavirus. Today, I am going to explain what this virus really is, where it comes from, how it spreads, and most importantly, what you can concretely do to protect yourself from it. Because fear without information protects no one, but knowledge can save your life.
Hantavirus is not a new virus. Scientists have known about it for more than 70 years, and its first documented appearance in modern medicine occurred under the most dramatic of circumstances. It is 1951. The Korean War is raging. Thousands of United Nations soldiers are stationed along the Hantan River in the south of the peninsula, and suddenly, more than 3,000 of them fall ill. Violent fever, intense headaches, vomiting. Then the kidneys fail. 15% of them die. Military doctors do not understand what is happening. They do not know whether it is a natural disease or a biological weapon deployed by the enemy. It would take 30 years to get the answer. In 1980, a South Korean virologist by the name of Dr. Ho Wang Lee finally identifies the culprit. A virus harbored in wild rats living along the Hantan River. A virus that jumps from rodents to humans without warning, without noise, without any forewarning signs. He named this virus the Hantavirus, after the river. He named this virus the Hantavirus, after the river. And it is from this name that the word hantavirus comes. But here is what scientists discovered next, and this is where the story becomes truly alarming. Hantavirus is not a single virus. It is an entire family of viruses. Dozens of different species spread across every continent, each one hosted by a particular species of rodent. Different rats, different regions of the world, different strains of the virus, and diseases with distinct clinical presentations. In Asia and Europe, hantavirus strains mainly cause what is known as hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome, a disease that destroys the kidneys, causes internal hemorrhaging, and can kill without appropriate treatment. In North and South America, the strains cause something different and potentially even more brutal: hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. Here, it is not the kidneys that fail first.
It is the lungs. They fill with fluid. The patient gradually suffocates, and the mortality rate can reach 50%. 1 in every 2 infected people can die. Take a moment to let that number sink in.
Amina was 34 years old, a nurse in New Mexico. Passionate about hiking, she regularly went to explore the desert areas of the American Southwest with her partner. In October 2024, she returns from a camping weekend in a remote area. She feels tired. Nothing unusual after 2 days outdoors. Then the fever arrives. Then intense muscle pain. She thinks it is the flu. She rests. But 3 days later, she starts having trouble breathing. Her partner takes her to the emergency room. Upon arrival, her oxygen saturation is at 87%. Below 90%, it is a life-threatening emergency. She is transferred to intensive care in less than an hour. I will tell you what happened to her in a few minutes. To understand how hantavirus kills, you need to understand what it does inside the body once it enters. Imagine your lungs as millions of tiny bubbles, the alveoli, surrounded by tiny blood vessels. It is at this precise location that the oxygen you breathe crosses the alveolar wall to enter your bloodstream. This is the vital exchange that takes place with every breath, dozens of times per minute, without you thinking about it. Hantavirus attacks the walls of these pulmonary blood vessels. It makes them permeable, porous. The fluid contained in the blood begins to leak through these damaged walls and accumulates inside the alveoli. These millions of tiny bubbles fill with fluid instead of air. The exchange of oxygen becomes impossible. The body suffocates. Not because air is not coming in, but because it can no longer cross the wall to reach the bloodstream. And this process can spiral out of control within just a few hours. This is why so many patients arrive at the emergency room already in a critical state.
Because the window between the first respiratory symptoms and complete respiratory failure is sometimes less than 24 hours. To this day, there is no vaccine approved against hantavirus by the FDA or the WHO, and there is no curative antiviral treatment. If you are infected, doctors can keep you alive while your immune system fights the virus, supplemental oxygen, mechanical ventilation, dialysis if the kidneys fail. Sometimes extracorporeal circulation to oxygenate the blood directly through a machine, but there is nothing that kills the virus directly. It is a virus that leaves your body to fend for itself. And some bodies do not make it.
The most dramatic hantavirus story in the Americas remains that of 1993. In May of that year, in the Four Corners region, at the border between New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah, a 19-year-old young man is driving down a deserted road to attend the funeral of his fiancée. She was 21. She was a marathon runner. She was in perfect health. And she had just died of suffocation without doctors understanding why. On his way to her funeral, the young man stops at a gas station. He can no longer breathe. He calls for help. The ambulance arrives. But before even reaching the hospital, his lungs collapse. He dies as well. 2 engaged partners, 2 marathon runners in perfect health, 2 unexplained deaths by suffocation within days of each other. Investigators from the New Mexico Office of the Medical Investigator then receive additional reports. 4 young adults, all in good health, all dead in the same way. The initial mortality rate of this outbreak was 80%.
The CDC intervenes. Biologists flood into the region, and there they discover something astonishing. The rodent population in the area had exploded, multiplied by 10. Why? Because the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines in 1991 had sent 20 megatons of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, triggering a volcanic winter that caused massive rainfall in the central United States. More rain meant more vegetation meant more food for rodents meant more virus, and more virus meant more sick people. In 1993, a new species of hantavirus, never previously described, had just been identified in the Western Hemisphere. It was named the sin nombre virus, literally the virus with no name.
And then came the strain at the heart of the 2026 outbreak, the most dangerous of all. In 1995, in Argentina, in the El Bolson region, 2 people suddenly die of suffocation. At autopsy, doctors find the genetic material of a hantavirus, but of a species distinct from all those known until then. They name it the Andes virus. 1 year later, in 1996, something never previously observed occurs in the same region. People who had no contact with rodents fall ill with the Andes virus. They had only been in prolonged contact with infected patients. The Andes virus was transmitting from person to person. Among the entire hantavirus family, dozens of strains spread across every continent, the Andes virus is the only strain for which confirmed human-to-human transmission has been documented. In 2018, another outbreak in southern Argentina confirmed and clarified this mode of transmission. An infected person had attended a birthday party while ill. People seated nearby fell ill 17 to 24 days later. One of them, very socially active, infected 6 other people before even showing visible symptoms. In total, 34 people were infected and 11 died in that single outbreak. And it is precisely the Andes virus that was circulating on that cruise ship that left Ushuaia in April 2026. Now, the question that has probably been burning on your lips since the beginning of this video: how do you protect yourself? The answer is both simple and precise, and it rests on a clear understanding of the mode of transmission. Hantavirus, all strains combined, with the exception of the Andes virus, does not spread from person to person. It spreads from rodents to humans. And it does so primarily through the airborne route, not by breathing the same air as an infected patient, but by inhaling contaminated particles from the droppings of infected rodents.
Their urine, their feces, their saliva, dried and reduced to microscopic dust, are inhaled without one's knowledge. You cannot see these particles, you cannot smell them. And yet, a single inhalation can be enough. This completely changes the way we think about prevention. First point, keep rodents out of your immediate environment. Seal all cracks and all openings in walls, foundations, window frames, and door frames. A rat can squeeze through a gap the thickness of a quarter. A mouse can fit through a gap the width of your little finger. Never leave food accessible. Store it in airtight containers. Eliminate sources of standing water. And manage your waste rigorously. Second point, if you must enter a space that may have been inhabited by rodents, an attic, a cellar, a warehouse, a long-closed storage room, an abandoned house, wear an N95 protective mask and gloves. Before cleaning rodent droppings, moisten them with a disinfecting solution. Never sweep them dry. Sweeping sends the particles into the air and directs them straight into your lungs. Third point, if you engage in outdoor activities in regions known to be endemic for hantavirus, rural areas of North and South America, certain regions of Central Asia and Eastern Europe, avoid sitting or sleeping directly on the ground. Store your food in airtight containers, and if you sleep in a tent, make sure it is properly sealed. Fourth point, and this is the most important, wash your hands before eating, after coming home, after touching surfaces in potentially contaminated spaces. This simple gesture, performed correctly both sides of the hands, between the fingers, the wrists, for a minimum of 20 seconds, remains one of the most effective protections against many pathogens, including hantavirus. And finally, fifth point, know the symptoms and act quickly. Hantavirus begins like the flu. Fever, intense muscle pain, headaches, sometimes nausea. This stage lasts between 3 and 7 days. This is the window during which many people think they have simply caught a common virus and rest at home. But if at this stage you develop breathing difficulties, even mild ones, go to the emergency room immediately. Do not wait. Do not wait until the next morning. The transition from the first respiratory signs to severe respiratory failure can occur within a matter of hours.
I told you about Amina, the nurse from New Mexico. She spent 38 days in intensive care, intubated, on dialysis. The doctors feared losing her twice, but her body finally eliminated the virus. Her lungs drained of the fluid that had invaded them. Her breathing returned. Her kidneys recovered. After several weeks of rehabilitation, she was able to go home. She told me something I will never forget. It was not the virus that saved me. It was the fact that my partner recognized the signs and brought me to the emergency room at the right moment. If I had waited one more night, I would not be here. Hantavirus is a silent virus. It does not make headlines most of the time. It infects people in rural areas, agricultural workers, hunters, people who live near rodents, without the press talking about it. But it is there. It circulates. And when the conditions come together, an explosion in the rodent population, human contact with contaminated areas, it strikes. The 2026 outbreak on that cruise ship is a lesson. Not a reason to panic, but a reason to learn. Because this virus, unlike many others, is largely preventable. Not by a vaccine, not by a medication, but by understanding its modes of transmission and by simple, accessible, and immediately applicable preventive measures. You now have that information. I am Dr. Maya Roa. Take care of yourself and of those you love.